Hi. My story starts from the very beginning. When I was a little kid, I was already a writer. I was filling up notebooks with weird cryptic languages, and I was making up letters before I even knew how to actually write them. My father really supported this. He was always giving me books and reading to me, taking me to museums and theater and opera, so I was really lucky from the beginning to kind of have this literary self of mine nurtured. And I continued to go through life with my dad being like, there are no such things as mistakes. There's no such thing as making a mistake. You don't have to feel worried that you're going to make a mistake with your life. And so I kind of took that with me and ended up studying writing in college. My mom wasn't too keen on this. A lot of people were like, oh, what are you going to do with a degree in poetry? Like, that's not something that you can actually use in the world. But it was the thing that I was really passionate about from the very beginning of my life. So I thought, what else would I study? And I did. I got this degree in poetry. And usually when you study at a university and you get a degree in poetry, you move on to get your master's, and then you move on to get your PhD, and then you end up being a professor. That's kind of the, that's usually the route that someone like me would take. But I didn't want to do the normal route. So I ended up traveling around the world. I traveled through Central and South America on my bicycle, and I was just filling up journals the whole time and being inspired by actual experience. I then came back to the United States and traveled across the country, taking permaculture courses and learning just different skills and different things, meeting people all over the place, writing their stories down. And all along, I was thinking, this is actually like the education that I want. I want to really feel what the world is like. So on my travels, I got a typewriter, which is a very strange thing for someone who's traveling around to buy because it's heavy and you have to lug it and take it with you. Like, I never got to have a record collection because I was always on the road. I traveled for about 4 years, and I did different jobs, and I was always working, and I was stopping. I'd plant gardens for people to make some money, and then I'd go visit my family, or then I'd go visit my friends. And I was here in Pasadena, actually, at the Rose Bowl, and I found this typewriter, and I was like, I need this. I don't know why, but I'm going to get this thing. And it was kind of the key to the rest of my life. Sometimes you can purchase something and it changes everything, and my typewriter totally changed my life because after LA, I went to Oakland, and I met this poet and artist, Zachary Houston, and he told me about his profession. He did this performance piece called Poem Store, and it had been his only job. Poetry had been his only job for 6 years or something like that. I was like, what? Have you ever heard of a poet who actually makes a living being a poet? So he invited me to go out with him, and he's like, do you have a typewriter? And I was like, yes, I do have a typewriter. I just got it 2 days ago. And so I went with him to this street fair in Oakland, and I sat there with my typewriter. And to me, this was just an experiment. I was like, oh, I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if I'll be able to write something quickly for someone. And so this woman came up to me and she said, hi, I'd like a poem about heartbreak. This is the first poem I ever wrote on demand. This woman asked me for a poem about heartbreak. I was like, oh, that's a hefty order. But then she was like, not the regular kind of heartbreak. But you look back on your whole life, and there's all these places that you didn't get to live because you can't live everywhere. There's all these people that you didn't get to love because you can't love everyone. There's all these things you didn't get to do because you can't do everything. And that's just heartbreaking. Right then, I was like, oh, this is something's going on here. This is a different thing than I thought it was. And I read her the poem after I wrote it, and she was weeping, and she was like, this is exactly what I needed. And I knew from that moment that Poem Store is something really important. It's something that would kind of change my life. And I approached it as this experiment a bunch of times, but I also thought, oh, this is something that's going to maybe turn into a career. I could see the hint of what it was meant to be. And so I dedicated myself to it. I got a bunch of typewriters fixed up, and I was like, I think I'm just going to try to do this as much as possible. And I moved to Humboldt County, and I lived in a little house on the side of a mountain, because when you're someone who has traveled for 4 years, you're not just going to be able to move somewhere normal. You have to move somewhere a little odd. And so I lived off the grid, and I grew my own food. And I had this kind of magical existence. I lived in this pretty much a utopia. I would live on this beautiful piece of property and write in the mornings and tend to my garden and my goats, and then I would drive 30 minutes into town and set up my poem store and type poems for people. And I did this for 3 years, and I was the town poet, and everyone knew who I was, and I got a lot done living there. I got a lot of inspiration for poems. I got a lot of work done by just being in that landscape. I don't know if you've ever been to Humboldt County, but it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen in the entire world. It's where the Redwood National Park is. It's on the coast, this magnificent, beautiful place. Really inspired me and filled me up. And all of my poems kind of brought myself to the surface. I kind of started to see myself in a different light, and I realized, oh, my talent as a writer is being combined with my talent to connect with people, because that's what Poem Store is. This weird job of mine is to sit there and connect with someone and listen to whatever their subject matter is, whatever they want their poem to be about. They name their subject, and then I type the poem for them, and they give me whatever they want in return. It's just based on donation. So I got all this inspiration, and I ended up being able to write my first book. This book had been in me for a long time, and I'd been working on it, and I thought, okay, now that I'm sitting in one place, I can actually get something done. And the book is a collection of found photographs that go along with narrative poems, and it's something that I had started in college and kind of kept in my bag with me while I was traveling, and I'd work on a poem here and there, but I really got down to it, and the book was published by a small publisher in Portland, Oregon, and I went on a book tour across the country, and it was an incredible experience and something that really boosted my idea of what it is to be a writer in this day and age. And I mean, there's a lot of things that come from being a writer, but there's a lot of things that are really unexpected. This is my friend Neal. He's the senior vice president of Green Diamond Timber, which is the largest timber company in the state of California. And I met him because I wrote him a poem. And he wrote me an email, and he said, you know what, I think I've been waiting to meet someone like you. His wife had passed away, and he needed to do something with her ashes. He didn't know what he could possibly do that would be personal enough. He didn't want to download something from the internet. He didn't want to pull something from a book. He wanted something just for her. And when he met me and I wrote him this poem, he thought, oh, you're the one. And so I did. I wrote him this really special memorial poem for his wife. And that single poem inspired this friendship. Now, this is an extremely unlikely friendship. This man is a timber baron. He smokes cigars. He's in charge of destroying the forest, right? Why would a poet who loves to live on the side of a mountain in this hippie lifestyle be friends with someone like this? But Neal immediately showed me that he was not that person. He taught me a really important lesson, and it was really easy to learn because of how incredible he is. I was unable to dehumanize him. I learned just from our relationship that there are worlds of possibility in these people who we demonize. People who are in positions of power are still human beings. This man had lost his wife. He'd been through a really traumatic experience, and I saw this in him through the world of poetry. And our friendship allowed us to kind of collaborate in a way that was really astonishing. I hooked him up with some local activists, tree sitters, people who really thought he was evil. And I told them, I was like, this guy is different. You have to approach him with the mentality that there are things he can say yes to, and he is willing to say yes to change. And it worked. They got together and they decided to save an entire forest of trees that these kids had been working to save for years and years and years. And really, it was Neal's gesture to say, I'm here, I'm a person, I want to listen to what you have to say. And this really, really got me. I was like, oh, this all happened because of a poem. This all happened because I was open and I took my talent into the public and I risked it, and I really connected with someone who normally would be my opposition or someone who would not imagine me to be their friend. So I thought, this is the art of giving. My job is to be in service as a writer, and my specific outlet is this kind of accessibility, this thing that I can write for anyone. I can write a poem for any type of person. It doesn't matter your demographic, it doesn't matter what you ask for, it doesn't matter where you're from. There is a connection, a human, language connection. And so I moved to the city. because I realized that I have this ability to change people's lives, to connect, a timber baron to a group of activists, to change people through my craft. And the city offers the one thing, a huge population of people. And I thought, okay, I should move to the city where there are more people. I have to take myself out of this perfect, beautiful life and risk going to a big, gnarly place that really doesn't interest me. Because here you are, and I'm here to just be able to give my gift to as many people as possible. When I moved, I unpacked all my stuff, and I found all these lists of things that I like. Now, this is a practice that I started about 10 years ago when a friend of mine gave me a note when he was getting to know me to say, here, these are a bunch of things that I like. It was kind of like, I don't know you very well, but now you know me because you can see all these little special things, but it really inspired me. I started writing lists all the time. I started writing lists to break my writer's block. I started writing lists when I was waiting on the bus. I started writing lists just to kind of inspire this positive feeling. And when I moved and saw all of them laid out on the table, I thought, oh, I see that this has been a very beneficial practice for me. Obviously, this has been helpful for me all these years, or I would not have kept doing it. And my thought was, if this helped me, I'm just a regular person, so it could probably help any person. And so I made a book about it. And coming to Los Angeles really solidified this idea that I actually have a career as a writer. Poem Store has been my only job for 6 years. And this is kind of an astonishing thing in this day and age because poetry isn't really held in the light anymore, but people need it. People still come for it. And I'm just trying to give people things that they need. And this book really spoke to that same mentality. Each one of these lists is a poem. And each time I've traveled and done a great book tour with this and seen people sit down and write so many lists and end up just connecting with each other and feeling better. And for some reason, the power of these lists is really this, it changes your mental state. It makes you feel connected to each other, but it makes you feel connected to the details in your life that supply meaning, and you can look in any situation and find something that you like. My favorite example is the traffic jam. So this obviously applies to everyone in Los Angeles. What is there to like about this moment when you are stuck in traffic and you're not moving and you need to go somewhere? There's nothing to like, but there is. I like to practice this all the time. You sit in the car. Well, I like the song on the radio. I like that my air conditioning works. I like the way my socks feel in my shoes. I like those vines growing on that bridge embankment. I like the color of that car over there, and suddenly, it's not so bad that you just listed all those things that you like, and it really has this power to kind of change your mind. And I know that all of that kind of sounds like this little hippie, everything's likable, but really what it is it's this special tool, and all I'm trying to provide is a tool to kind of change people's outlook and give them something to better themselves with. And yes, that is a hippie mentality, but I've always been a hippie, and I don't care. So with all of these things combined, Poem Store, my practice as an artist, I'm just trying to do my best to make things that are accessible, to make things that are helpful for people, but also to be in service. From my story with Neal to the simplicity of writing a single poem for one person and not knowing what will happen, I am in service to mankind, to the earth, to whatever it is that moves me. And just giving that inspiration to other people makes living in the city totally worth it, and the risk of leaving that beautiful life in Humboldt a really positive one. So that's my story.